सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पाद शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। ॐ भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवागुंसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। So in the first 5 verses, the essential important instructions are given for meditation, for realizing the ultimate truth. First of all, purify the mind, and with such a dispassionate mind, withdraw the mind from the outer world, withdraw the mind from the unreal, withdraw the mind from what I am not, and then fix that mind upon the truth, what I am. Detach from the unreal, attach to the real. Detach from what I am not, attach to what I am. The problem is identification, because of which I am not able to know what I am. So therefore the solution lies in disidentification. So what does the teacher say? Nirasta vishaya sangam sanniruddham manohridi yada ayati atmanah bhavam tada tatparamam padam. Yada nirasta vishaya sangam manah hridi sanniruddham. When the dispassionate mind, which is not at all interested in the world, when that mind is withdrawn and placed very well in the heart, in the very core of our being, the very center of our being, then what happens? Tada atmanah bhavam ayati. Then it attains the nature of the self. Tada tat paramam padam ayati. Then that mind experiences the supreme truth, that supreme abode, which is my own self. So here you can say Atma Bhavam equal to Paramapadam. Meaning what? What is that supreme state? that which we call God, the most auspicious, the most divine, that infinite, that immortal, the Upanishad makes it clear that you are. Tat Tvam Asi, or Aham Brahma Asmi. It is the same thing. The truth, you don't have to search it anywhere outside. It is not outside. As long as you are searching outside, you will not get it. If at all you want to experience it, go within. Now, the teacher gives an instruction. This practice will take some time. It is not going to happen instantaneously. It will take time. So therefore, Tavat eva nirodhavyam yavat hridigatam kshayam. A time comes when that abidance becomes effortless. When the mind abides in the self, abides in the consciousness effortlessly. Till then, this practice of meditation must continue. Yato yato nischarati manaschanchalamassthiram tatastato niyamyetat atmanyeva Vashamne. This similar verse is found in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, Dhyana Yoga. Shanehi shanehi uparamet buddhya dhruti gruhitaya atma samstham manakritva nakinchitapi chintayet. Shanehi shanehi, slowly, slowly. What you have to do? Withdraw the mind from the world. How? Buddhya, by your intellect. So intellect is that faculty which has gained the knowledge from the scriptures, which is convinced about the scriptural knowledge. That faculty is called intellect. Whenever we study scriptures, intellect is the one which gains knowledge. So what that intellect must do? That intellect must lovingly bring back the mind. Mind takes decision based on likes and dislikes. Intellect takes decision based on rights and wrongs. This is right, I will do it. This is wrong, I will not do it. This is the way intellect speaks. How does the mind say, this I like, let us do it. This I don't like, let us not do it. So now throughout our life, for many, many ages, many, many births, we have been seeking happiness outwardly. So you can't immediately withdraw the mind because that momentum is there. The mind tends to seek happiness in the outer world. So always, naturally, effortlessly, mind will try to seek happiness outside in the world of objects and beings. What should the intellect do? Earlier, the intellect was also ignorant because it had never studied the scriptures. It had never attended satsang. So the intellect used to back the mind. Because according to the intellect, happiness is outside. Because that is what we experience. Whenever my desired object, when I gain, whenever my desires are fulfilled, I become happy. So the intellect was thinking that happiness is outside. So therefore, when the mind became extrovert, intellect used to back it. But now after attending satsang, now after studying scriptures, now after gaining the firm conviction that happiness is not outside, it is within. Now this educated intellect, what will it do? It will tell the mind, oh my dear mind, the place where you are seeking happiness, it is not there. Come back. Shanehi shanehi uparamet buddhya dhruti gruhitaya. Now there is a tug of war. Mind says, no, I had found happiness outside, therefore I will go out. It is going outward. Intellect says, no, I am convinced happiness is within. Now the intellect is trying to pull the mind within. Mind is trying to pull the intellect outside. Who will win? The one who is strong. If your mind is wandering, then who is strong? The mind is strong. So in the beginning, this wandering of the mind cannot be avoided. Everyone has to start this way only. In the beginning, you have studied everything, you have understood everything, you are convinced of everything, but even then you will find the mind wandering. Let it wander. Have patience, have lot of patience. But keep on trying, keep on trying, keep on trying. Every time you will find the mind goes for happiness in the outer world and in the process burns its fingers and come back. Then the intellect must advise the mind. See, I told you happiness is not outside. You did not listen to me. Therefore you have burnt your fingers. Now the mind is educated. Intellect has become more and more strong. Now each and every experience of your life, you start analyzing based on the scriptural knowledge. Then what happens? Slowly, the intellect starts becoming stronger in you. And a time comes when intellect becomes very strong. And then that powerful intellect is able to withdraw the mind. By that time, the mind also has understood that there is no happiness, there is only sorrow. And then that mind easily gets withdrawn from the world. The whole process in one word is called dispassion, vairāgya. Tāvat eva nirodhavyam yavad hridi gatam kshayam. Now that the mind withdraws and now the mind starts paying attention to consciousness. So yesterday we were seeing at the seat of meditation, you will find the thoughts rising in the mind. The thoughts rising in the mind represents the worldly thoughts. So what are you supposed to do? You are not interested in the world, so you must not show any interest in the thoughts. Instead, you start paying attention to the consciousness, the real you, the truth. So as you start paying attention to consciousness, put in other words, as you start witnessing the thoughts remaining rooted in consciousness, witnessing the thoughts remaining rooted in consciousness, what happens? Hridi gatam kshayam. The mind dies down. The mind gains its power when you start cooperating with it. The moment you stop cooperating with the mind, the moment you start witnessing the mind has to become silent. It is something like a naughty child playing a lot of pranks, and what does the mother do? Sometimes mother doesn't scold. Mother just keeps watching the child. And now the child has understood mother is watching. What will the child do? It will stop playing pranks, isn't it? It becomes silent. Why? Mother is watching. In the same way, the mind also stops playing all pranks. Hridi gatam kshayam. Then what do you experience? When the mind has hushed to silence, now this mind, this distorting mind, which is nothing but a distorting medium, while seeing the truth, we are seeing the world through the mind. Right? We are seeing everything through the mind. And now the mind disappears. What remains is only the reality, which is supreme truth. Now the Upanishad says, etat jnānam ca dhyānam ca. That is meditation, this is knowledge. Now the Upanishad, it's only 5 verses. Now we have another 17 verses. Sheshaha nyāyaha ca vistaraha. All the other verses are only logic. Sometimes we may have a lot of questions. In order to specify those questions with convincing logic, the remaining verses are given. Sheshaha nyāya cha vistaraha. Little more elaboration. Fundamentals are over. What is the fundamental? You are the supreme truth. What you are seeking in life is you yourself. You are seeking happiness, happiness is your nature. You are seeking immortality, immortality is your nature. So, shift your attention within. This is the teaching. Right. Now, certain tips are given for meditation. What is that tip? Verse number 6. Naiva chintyam. Don't think of it. Nacha achintyam. But don't refrain from thinking it. Nachintyam, don't think of it. Chintyameva, you must definitely think of it. What is this now? Oh Guru, please tell me, should I think or should I not think? So Guru is telling you should not think also, at the same time you should think. Or now this is strange. Now see, here comes the helplessness of the Guru in guiding the student. Because words are limited. Guru is trying to take the attention of the student to something which is indescribable. Remember the term? Which is the term? Among that 15, which is the term? Indescribable. Anirdeshyaha. The truth is anirdeshyaha. Now the Guru has no other option but to use the limited medium of language. Right? Guru is expressing his helplessness in presenting that truth through the words. Now Guru has no other means but to use the words. Isn't it? So therefore, this verse. Na chintyam, don't think of it. Why it should not be thought of? Now see, the funny aspect about this is, you have to use the mind as the medium, but the mind cannot grasp it. Na chintyam means, may you not think of that truth with likes and dislikes, with an impure mind. Why? Because it is pakshapata vinirmuktam Brahman. What is the kind of Brahman you are going to meditate upon? It is pakshapata vinirmuktam, free from pakshapata, free from partiality. Meaning, pure Brahman you are going to meditate. May you not meditate with an impure mind. Na chintyam. A mind filled with likes and dislikes cannot grasp that Brahman who is beyond likes and dislikes. If you want to meditate upon pure Brahman, your mind also has to be pure. A pure mind can alone intuitively experience pure Brahman. Got it? Put in another words, let us take a worldly example. A person who has very strong likes and dislikes, can he be impartial in life? Can he see the truth? Never. A person who has very strong likes and dislikes can never see the truth as it is. For example, a mother who loves her child very much will not see the defects of the child, she will only see the defects of the teacher. There are many parents who go to the school, complains about the teacher, complains about the principal, correct? And according to her, what is her opinion? My child is very good, the school authorities are bad. Of course, the other case may be there. What I am trying to say is, when your mind is filled with likes and dislikes, you cannot see the truth. You will always tend to be partial towards whom you like. Isn't it? Yes. In the same way, a mind which is filled with likes and dislikes, can it experience that Brahman which is beyond likes and dislikes, which is pure? Not possible. Na chintyam. Don't think that truth with an impure mind, with a partial mind. A partial mind cannot think of impartial Brahman. As far as a karma yogi is concerned, he has gained it. His mind is free from likes and dislikes. How? He performs actions only for pleasing God. He doesn't perform action based on likes and dislikes. So for many years he has been performing duties as a karma yogi, so he naturally attains this state. For him, there is no problem. But for those who have not prepared the mind, this is an important instruction. Don't try to meditate upon Brahman with your unprepared mind. Na chintyam means unprepared mind, don't think, because you will not get. So, O Lord, do you mean to say that I should not think, I should not meditate? No, nacha achintyam. That doesn't mean that you should not think. Purify the mind and think. Purify your mind and think. Don't refrain from thinking. But at the same time, again comes, na chintyam, don't think. Now the second don't think means, second na chintyam means, don't think of that truth as an object. Normally, whenever we think of something as different from ourselves, isn't it? As an object. Na chintyam means, don't think of Brahman as an object, think of it as Your subject, chintyameva, you must think of it. Don't become lazy. Okay, anyway, mind cannot think of it, so better I drop meditation. No! Chintyameva, you must think of it as a very self in you, as a very subject in you. Please keep this in mind. Chintyam doesn't mean that the mind can grasp it. Here, chintyam means paying attention, being aware. Why? Because one of the characteristics of Brahman is achintyaha. Keep this in mind. Only that which has properties can be thought of. Red color, you can think of it. Round in shape, you can think of it. Correct? Anger, jealousy, you can think of it. Why? There is a property. Now what about Brahman? It is free from properties. It is nirguna. Gunas are not there, properties are not there. So mind cannot grasp anything which has no property. So here, when it is a chintyam, understand, it is just a state of being. Consciousness cannot be thought of. It can only be experienced as the very state of being. It is a state of being. It is not a verb, Gurudev used to say. It is a noun. Your state of being. You are. Is it a verb or a noun? Verb represents action. You don't perform action there. You just are. I am. Now your attention is upon that amness in you. Now these are all limitations of language. So I will be using so many grammatically improper language. Pay attention to your amness. Right? Your existence is experienced as I am. Pay attention to the amness of yours. This is called a chintyam. Here, importance is in awareness. Importance is not in thinking, because you are not trying to form a concept. Any concept can be understood by the mind. Here there is no concept. Here it is a mere existence, a state of being. Chintyamev. No doubt this process is very difficult. So therefore, the Guru gives another very, very important tip in the next verse. What is that? Swarena sandhayet yogam asvaram bhavayet param asvarena anubhavena bhavo va bhava ishyate. So when Guru gave this instruction, na chintyam, na cha achintyam, na chintyam, chintyameva tat, Guru understood the poor disciple is confused. So now therefore, Guru comes down to the level of the student. Whenever the Guru finds that something is hard to digest for the student, who must approach whom? Student cannot go to the level of the teacher. Teacher must come down to the level of the student. So, one level down, the Guru comes. What does he say? My dear child, first you do this. Swarena sandhayet yogam. 2 steps of upasana, meditation is prescribed here. Guru says, first you meditate upon swaram, then you meditate upon asvara. First swara dhyānam, then asvara dhyānam. Then it becomes easy. Now we have to spend some time. What is this swara dhyānam and asvara dhyānam? Here swara means sound. Which sound? Here the mention is about omkara. Now these Upanishads, they are all revealed in the Satya Yuga, we may say. So at that time Rama is not there, Krishna is not there, no avatars are there. So those times, those people used to take the alambanam, the support of Om. Now what is this Om? Om is a combination of 3 letters, matras they are called as. What are they? A, U, not ma, it's 3 matras. Now what does it represent? Now see, if you want to utter any word, you have to open your mouth. Yes or no? Can you utter a word without opening your mouth? No. So the first letter is A. Without A, you can't pronounce any word, correct? Now after having pronounced the word, what do? You close your mouth. Right? You open your mouth, utter the word, close your mouth. Now these two are unavoidable. Which one? A and Rest, everything is a combination of your mouth, which is represented as U. Got it? So now, A, U, represents all possible words that you can utter, that you can pronounce. Correct? In this A, U, everything has come. Now what does a word signify? Every word signifies a corresponding object in the world. Correct? A word signifies an object. Object or emotions or whatever. Everything is represented by a word. So therefore, the A, U, represents all possible objects of the world. In short, A, U, represents the world. Now what is the world? It is the manifestations of Lord. So therefore, what is the best name you can give to the Lord? The combination of A, U, nothing but Om. The world is the manifestation of the Lord. The world is nothing but objects. Objects are nothing but words. So what is the appropriate word you can give to the Lord of the universe? It is Om. It is called as Saguna Brahman. Sometimes this A, U, represents waking state, dream state, deep sleep state respectively. A is taken for waking state. U taken for dream state. Represents deep sleep state. Right? Because all our experiences come under these three. Do you experience anything else? No. Waking, dream, deep sleep. Om represents all your experiences. And now after chanting Om, there is a silence that is called as asvara. There is no swara there is only silence. And what does that silence represent? Silence represents the very substratum upon which the Om is heard. If you have to listen to Om, there has to be silence as the background, isn't it? Silence was there. Even when chanting of Om continues, silence is there. Even when the Om has stopped, silence will be there. So what is the substratum? Silence is the substratum. It is represented by Nirguna Brahman. Saguna Brahma is represented by Om. Nirguna Brahma is represented by silence. It is called as Amatra Om. So now, how is it going to help me in my meditation? For that, let me give an example. From that example, we will come to this. Have you seen this pole vault game? Olympics, etc. They have this. So there is a pole, and this person runs fast, and then he places the pole, and because of his momentum, the pole starts straightening up. Because of the momentum of his running, then what does he do? He climbs the pole, and by the time the pole has become vertical, by the time he has reached here, and then what does he do? He drops the pole, jumps across the crossbar, and goes. Correct? First he runs, gains momentum, places the pole, and then after that, as the pole is straightening, he climbs it, and by the time the pole has become straight, he has reached on the top and then jumps. This is exactly what you are supposed to do in meditation also. What is this pole? This pole is your mind. And what is this climbing? Climbing is nothing but preparing the mind. The mind has three states: tamasic, rajasic, sattvic. So climbing the pole means preparing the mind. Come out of your tamas, make it rajas. From rajas, make it sattvic. Sattvic means pure. Tamasic mind means lazy mind, dull mind. Rajasic mind means restless mind, extroverted mind. Sattvic mind means pure mind, quiet mind. So what are you supposed to do? Make your mind from tamas to rajas, take your mind from tamas to rajas, from rajas to sattva, and ultimately what you are supposed to do? Don't hold on to sattvic mind, because mind is also a part of matter. Drop that sattvic mind also. Then go beyond. Got the point? So here also 2 process is mentioned. Number 1, process of purification. Number 2, process of dropping. First purify the mind, then drop the mind. First prepare the mind, then witness the mind. These are the 2 processes. So svara dhyānam purifies the mind, asvara dhyānam witnesses the mind. This is the thing to be done. So what do you do in swara dhyānam? Here Omkara meditation is mentioned. It is not necessary that you must do Omkara meditation. It can be called as Ishta Devata Upasana. Both are same. The very same way the Vyasa Rishi, he found that these Upanishads are becoming too difficult for the modern generation. Therefore, he wrote Puranas. Bhagavata Purana is very, very important among all those Puranas. Most popular. So what is the purpose of Purana? The purpose of Purana is to create Ishta Devata. Now, let me spend some time there. So in Swara Dhyana, what do? You make use of the mind. Take the example of that pole vault. Suppose this person says, anyway I have to drop the pole. Let me drop in the beginning itself. Then what will happen? He will remain there only, isn't it? Or suppose he says that when he has reached the peak of the pole, this pole has helped me reach this much. How can I drop such a pole? It will be injustice. No? He will remain there. Then also he can't go. So at the appropriate time you have to make use of it, and at the right time you have to drop it. Make use, drop. Both processes are equally important. So in Swara Dhyānam, what do? You make use of the mind. You employ the mind. You don't try to witness the mind. Witnessing the mind, witnessing an unprepared mind is like dropping the pole in the beginning. So what is the instruction given? Swarena sandhayet yogam. Unite with swara, meaning do swara dhyānam. So what does it mean? So now remember, we are doing upasana now. This sadhana is called antaranga sadhana. It is not bahiranga sadhana. What is the difference? The general sadhana you practice throughout the day is called bahiranga sadhana. But that preparation you do at the seat of meditation is called antaranga sadhana. At the seat of meditation, when you prepare the mind, it is called as antaranga sadhana. The general disciplines you follow, being honest, etc., etc., which you follow throughout the day, not at the seat of meditation. That is called as bahiranga sadhana. Now here the instruction is about antaranga sadhana. So at the seat of meditation, you are going to prepare the mind now. Now you have come from the office, you have come from the world, etc. Mind is extrovert. Now slowly you are preparing the mind for higher meditation. What is the preparation? Chant your Ishta Devata mantra. Here it is Om. Now whatever Ishta Devata mantra you have, you can chant it. That is called Swara Dhyānam. Now the question is, which mantra is the most sacred? Tell me, which one is the most sacred? For japa, which mantra is the most sacred? There is Gayatri mantra, there is Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, there is Om Namo Narayanaya, Om Namah Shivaya. Which one is the most powerful mantra? Now see, now if I tell any one mantra, you will fight with each other. This is where fanaticism breeds. My mantra alone is most powerful, my understanding is right, his understanding is wrong. Finished. All of you will become terrorists. Understand one thing, power has to come from where? It has to come from you. How does it matter which mantra you are going to use? Because who are you? Tattvamasi. Isn't it? A mantra by itself has no power. You are the one who is infusing mantra by chanting it again and again. Understand this very clearly. How does it matter which alambanam you use? Which support you use? Take any mantra. So each Purana will have its own certain mantras. Right? The Shiva Purana will say, Om Namah Shivaya is the ultimate. Bhagavata Purana will say, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Kali Santarana Upanishad will say, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Keep this, make this very clear in mind. Mantra by itself has no power. If at all the power has to come, it has to come from you. How do you bring out that power from you? By chanting it. That is called as svara dhyānam. You have to put forth effort. And more you put forth effort, that mantra will become powerful for you. Not for others. You understand? The more you work hard, that mantra start yielding results for you. So therefore power has to come from where? From you. It doesn't matter which mantra you use. Now here we are in the Upanishadic age, so therefore the chanting is Om. But understand, you can chant any name according to your Ishta Devata. Whichever Lord you consider the supreme. But understand, your Ishta Devata is supreme for you. It may not be supreme for someone else. Don't fight. Take any Devata. But understand, all Devatas are representation of one truth alone. You take Jesus, you take Allah, you take Rama, Krishna, Hanuman, Ganapati, all are one and the same. Because the description of each God ultimately is Satchit Anand. Bas. Every Purana also, ultimately there will be some Upanishadic content, and there the description will match exactly with the descriptions in the Upanishad. So what does it mean? All gods are one and the same. Let there be clarity. So Swarena Sandhayet Yogam, you can use Om, you can use your Ishta Devata mantra. Now what is the use of chanting this mantra? When you chant, you are invoking your relationship with God. Now remember, you are not seated here without any preparation. You have already prepared your mind through Karma Yoga. So therefore now you already have established your relationship with God. This name which you are uttering, the mantra which you are uttering, is not some mantra which is strange to you. No. It is the name of that Lord whom you love the most. So the moment you chant this mantra, what happens to your heart? The heart becomes filled with love and devotion, respect and reverence towards that supreme truth. This is the purpose of japa. You are preparing your mind. Now, how did you develop this love and devotion? Lot of experiences of your life has created this love, faith, trust, etc. This is where the Puranas come into picture. What do the Puranas do? In every Purana there is an Ishta Devata, and there are so many Leelas of that Ishta Devata. Correct? So there is a description of that Ishta Devata. Say for example Vishnu in Bhagavata Purana. Shankha, Chakra, Gada, Padma, etc. is there. The way he dresses, that is there. His wife, it is there. His vehicle, everything is described. And then his Leelas are described. And what is the content of the Leela? Every story will have the same content. The content is, a devotee is in distress. He is suffering. And this devotee tries to get rid of his suffering through various worldly means. He is not able to do it. Ultimately, he surrenders unto Lord, and then and there he gets a solution. All his suffering is relieved. This is the basic content of every Leela. Yes or no? Take the story of Prahlada, take the story of Dhruva, take the story of Draupadi, take the story of Ajamila, take the story of Gajendra. All stories have the same theme. The theme is, whenever the devotee was in problem, as long as he has not sought the lotus feet of the Lord, the problems remained. The moment his attention turned towards the Lord, he starts getting guidance, he starts getting strength, he starts finding solution to all his problems. Right? Then and there the problems are over. Now when you start reading Puranas again and again, when you start listening to the Kathas again and again, slowly you start developing love for Lord. Because here is a Lord who is there, who knows my problem, who has a solution for my problem. Here is a Lord who can give me peace. There are so much of problems in the world, but there is one place where I can unburden all my problems. So naturally, you tend to love that Lord. Isn't it? Now when you listen to such stories again and again from Purana, naturally you tend to put it into practice in your life also. That devotee, when he was suffering, he got guidance from the Lord. Definitely that Lord will guide me also. So whenever problem comes to me, what will I remember first? I will naturally remember Lord, because that samskara I have gathered by attending satsangs, by attending kathas. So naturally the first preference to solve the problem will be God. And when I see the results, what is the result? Whenever I am in trouble and whenever I have taken my problems to God, I have found the solution. So definitely this is the ultimate place, the best place to seek solution. Right? So whenever again and again in my life, when I start seeing the results, what happens to me? My faith in God becomes stronger day by day. My love for God becomes stronger day by day. My devotion for God becomes stronger day by day. My reverence for God becomes stronger day by day. This way, I develop a very strong relationship. And after having developed that strong relationship, whenever I chant the name of that Lord, what happens? This relationship is invoked. And when this relationship is invoked, my heart becomes filled with love and reverence for God. Are you getting the point? This is called Swarena Sandhayet Yogam. It is not merely chanting Om, Om, Om. How much ever you chant, nothing will happen. Because you don't know what you are chanting. Don't be foolish. Right? There's a lot of preparation involved. In the beginning, karma yoga, because you can't sit quietly for a long time. You are so restless. So karma yoga you do. But as the mind becomes purer and purer, as the relationship becomes stronger and stronger, then you are able to sit. Then you are able to do this upasana. So at the seat of meditation, what do? You are not watching your mind. You are employing your mind. You are making use of your mind so that it becomes purer. So you remember all those leelas of the Lord, how the Lord has saved so many devotees. For example, take that Draupadi case. Draupadi tried to seek help from her husbands, of no use. And then she tried her own strength, no use. Then ultimately when she became totally helpless, what did she do? Raised her hands and cried, Krishna, help me. Then what happened? That very same moment, she got guidance. When you remember such thing, now see, you are employing your mind now. You are imagining all those scenes. You are imagining how that devotee has been helped by the Lord. Now see, you are making use of the mind. You are making use of the world. You are making use of the experiences in the world. This is called Swarena Sandhayet Yogam. You are not saying world is an illusion. No. What is your idea about God? Lord, you are omniscient, you are omnipotent, you are Karuna Sagara, the ocean of compassion. You are my mother, you are my father, you are my guru, you are my relative. Tvameva Mata cha Pita Tvameva. Isn't it? This is called Swarena Sandhayet Yogam. Meaning, after this meditation, after this Swara dhyānam, what should happen? These two things should happen. Chitta Shuddhi, Chitta Ekagrata. These two must happen. The mind must become pure. The mind must become single-pointed. concentrated. Once these two have been achieved, the purpose of svara dhyānam is over. Then what are you supposed to do? Asvaram bhavayet param. Once the heart is filled with that love and devotion for God, and now you are filled with that love and reverence for God, and then bring in the Upanishadic statement, Aham Brahma Asmi. That supreme God, that omniscient God is right here. He is not somewhere in Vaikuntha or Kailasa. Where is He? He is the very consciousness in me. What are you doing now? Now you shift from svara to asvara. Now you shift your attention from the thoughts, from the mind, to the observer of the mind, to that conscious principle in the light of which you are conscious of thoughts. See that shift of attention. Are you getting the point? Now the question is, why is it that first stage is necessary? Why can't I do in the beginning itself? Shift the attention from the mind to the consciousness. Why can't I do in the beginning? In the beginning, if you do, since your mind is unprepared, consciousness and thoughts will appear to be one. In an unprepared mind, you will not be able to make out which is consciousness and which is thought. But the moment the heart is filled with love and devotion, you clearly see the distinction between the two. Between what? Consciousness is one, thoughts are something different. This difference can be seen, the difference can be meditated upon only and only if the mind is purified. So svara dhyānam, the purpose is purification, concentration. After that you get into asvara dhyānam. Now what is this asvara dhyānam? Asvara dhyānam means abiding in the self, witnessing the mind. Witnessing the mind. Now, as far as this witnessing the mind is concerned, the best teaching is available in Upadesha Saram. Manasam tu kim margane krute naiva manasam marga arjava vrittayastvaham vrittimashritaha vrittayo mano vidyaham manaha. Now you are inquiring into the mind. After having prepared the mind, now you start witnessing the mind. What happens when you witness the mind? Manasam tu kim margane krute naiva manasam. There is no mind only. Meaning, mind disappears. Marga arjava. This is a straightforward means. Straight path. If you can do this, nothing else you need to do. But Bhagavan, this is very difficult. I can't do it. Please help us. So then Bhagavan gives some tips. What is that? Vrittayastvaham vrittimashritaha vrittayo mano vidyaham manaha. Fine. Let us find out what this mind is. What is this mind? Vrittayaha manaha. Mind is nothing but vrittayaha. Vritti means thoughts. Mind is nothing but flow of thoughts. Is it fine? Fine. Now Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi gives a very, very important tip. Right? Very important. What is that? Vrittayaha tu aham vrittim ashritaha. These thoughts can be divided into two. What are they? Idam vritti, aham vritti. This thought and I thought. Now I will use these Sanskrit terms only because when I say I thought, it is not in the meaning maine socha. No. I thought is not in the meaning maine socha. It is I under quotes thought. It is called as aham vritti. So to remove all confusions, now I will be using only Sanskrit term. Idam vritti means this thought. Aham vritti means I thought. Right? Now, your mind contains thoughts. All the thoughts can be divided into two. What are they? Idam vritti, aham vritti. Idam vritti example is, this is a flower, this is the world, this person I met, that place I went. So place, person, etc. All that you call it as idam, this. This means other than me. All those thoughts which describe something other than me is called as idam vritti, this thought. That particular thought which describes me is called as aham vritti, I thought. Okay? Now what does Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi say? Vrittayaha tu aham vrittim ashritaha. All your thoughts in the mind, it takes support upon aham vritti. Now that you are going to witness your mind, now that you are going to destroy your mind by witnessing, understand, my child, you don't have to witness each and every thought. Pay attention to that from which all the thoughts come from. Suppose you want to destroy a tree, what will you do? Two methods are there. One is keep on clipping leaf by leaf, twig by twig. Or what do? Cut off from the very root. Isn't it? In the same way, this mind tree has grown very huge. Now you want to destroy this mind. You have to transcend this mind. How to do? So the root is being mentioned. What is the root? Aham vritti is the root. All your thoughts depend upon I thought, aham vritti. So therefore what I have to do? Destroy aham vritti, all the thoughts will be destroyed. Now the question is, what is this aham vritti? And how did it form? Aham vritti means what? Description about myself. You can call it ahankara or you can call it ego. The concept which I have gathered about myself is called aham vritti. What is my opinion about myself? If I am asked to describe myself, how will I describe? I means how an ignorant person will describe himself if he is asked to describe himself. Whatever he says will fall under the category of aham vritti. So what is my understanding? A person who has not read the scriptures, his understanding is he is this body. Correct? How did he form this understanding? By observation. What did he observe? He observes that a person when he is born, he is available for interaction, and the moment the physical body dies, he is no more available for interaction. What does it mean? Therefore that person is this body. Because when the body came into existence, he is there for interaction. When the body ceases its existence, he is no more available. So therefore I conclude, since he is that body, definitely I am this body. First definition. Whenever I pinch this body, I have pain. Whenever I pinch somebody else's body, I don't have pain. So what does it mean? This is me. See? And then slowly I start forming concepts about me. This body is dark, so I am dark. This body is fair, so I am fair. How did I come to this conclusion? I compare myself with other bodies, and then in comparison, I rate myself. I form an opinion about myself. I am tall, I am short, after comparing others. I am intelligent, I am dull, after comparing other students in the class. Isn't it? So what I do is, every moment I keep on comparing myself with others, and slowly, I start forming an opinion about myself. This opinion, this identity which I have formed over so many years, so many births, in a consolidated form, is called as aham vritti or I thought. Remember, it is a thought. Got it? Whenever somebody praises me, when I sing, oh, you sing very nicely, then again I add one more feather to this I thought. I am a good singer. Whenever someone criticizes me, oh, dull, oh, fool, you can't understand even this much, then another feather, I am a fool. See, slowly, I start forming opinion about myself, this opinion about myself, this notion about myself is called aham vritti. Right? Now what is it that you have to do at the seat of meditation? Ramana Maharshi says, just watch this I thought, because it is also a thought. Any thought can be witnessed. Isn't it? Consciousness cannot be witnessed, but I thought can be witnessed. Ahamayam kuto bhavati chinvatah aipatatyaham nija vicharanam. Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi says, this is nija vicharanam, self-inquiry. What? Aham ayam kutaha bhavati. Start inquiring, what is this I thought? Who am I? Just witness this I thought. I, wonder of wonders, patati. This false I, false. This illusory I, false. Aham vritti, false. And then what happens? Ahaminasha bhajyahamahantaya sfurati hridsvayam paramapurnasa. Ahaminashabhaji, the moment this aham vritti falls, in its place the real I shines forth. Aham ahantaya sfurati hridsvayam. That real I shines forth as I am, I am. And what is the nature of this real I? Paramapurna sat. It is perfect. It is immortal, infinite, blissful. This real I shines forth in the place of aham vritti. Aham vritti falls, the real I shines. The real aham shines. This is nija vicharanam. The same thing is pointed out here. Now, some of the difficulties which you will find in this meditation. Now remember, at the seat of meditation, what are you supposed to do? Witnessing. Correct? Suppose your mind is not pure. Who will witness whom? Aham vritti will witness idam vritti. What will happen? At the most, idam vritti will go, but aham vritti will remain, because it is not witnessed. It is a part of the witness. Getting the point? Who has to witness? Pure consciousness has to witness. But now what has happened? When your mind is not pure, aham vritti becomes a part of consciousness, and consciousness messed up with aham vritti starts witnessing idam vritti. Idam vritti will go, but aham vritti will remain. But suppose you do this svara dhyānam, the initial preparation, the saguna brahma upasana, what happens? In the process you say, God, I am nothing, I am nobody, you are everything. In the process, what happens to aham vritti? It becomes very, very weak. The mind has become pure. Then once the mind has become pure, this aham vritti and consciousness, you start seeing a distance. To such an extent that you are able to witness aham vritti also. Getting the point? And the moment aham vritti is witnessed, what happens to aham vritti? Drops, falls. And once aham vritti is gone, what remains? Only pure consciousness remains. This is what is mentioned here. What is said? Asvarena anubhavena. When you meditate upon this asvara, asvara means silence, asvara means consciousness. Meaning, when you witness your thoughts, what happens? Bhavaha abhavaha ishyate. Bhava means existence becomes non-existent. That which was existing becomes non-existent. Reverse is also true. Abhava becomes bhava. That which was non-existent becomes existent. The existent become non-existent, and the non-existent become existent. In my ignorance, what was existing? Ego is existing. Aham vritti is existing in my ignorance. When you do this meditation, it becomes non-existent. In my ignorance, for me, aham vritti is real, pure consciousness is as though non-real, because I don't experience it. But then when I do this meditation, what happens? That consciousness which was till then non-existent, that Satchit Anand, that infinite immortal self, which was till then non-existent. Non-existent means non-perceptible, which I had not perceived till then, it is available for perception. It becomes existent. Bhavaha abhavaha ishyate. Are you getting the point? Meaning, I come to know myself as I am. The false notions are totally wiped away. Now I come to know myself as I am. Now what is the nature of myself? See the next verse. Tadeva nishkalam brahma nirvikalpam niranjanam tad brahma aham iti jnatva brahma sampadyate dhruvam. For the first time I come to know myself as what? Nishkalam, partless, nirvikalpam, without any difference, without any thoughts, niranjanam, free from all kinds of impurity, dhruvam, which is eternal. See the next verse. Anantam, which is infinite, aprameyam, which is immeasurable, which is not an object but the very subject, and which is hetu drishtanta varjitam, free from hetu, logic. There is no logic. You have not arrived at this state through logic but through meditation. And there is no drishtanta available. There is no example. You can't compare the self with anything else in the world. Incomparable experience. Drishtanta varjita. There is no simile. There is no upama available. That is the kind of experience you have. And then what happens? Yet jnatva buddhaha muchyate. That wise person is liberated from all kinds of bondages. Please keep in mind, how does he experience? He doesn't see the vision of God, something different from him. How does he see? Tad Brahma aham. This is me. My God. I never knew I am this. Right? That ego is completely gone. That individuality is completely washed away. What remains is only Sat, Chit, Anand. And then he comes to know, na nirodha, na cha utpattihi, na baddho, na cha sadhakaha, na mumukshuhu, na mumuktaha, ityesha paramartha. He comes to know, oh, what a fool I was. I was never bound. It was only my mental imagination that I was bound. It was only a notion in the mind that I was bound. That notion is gone. So what is his experience now? Na nirodha. There was never a death for me. Nacha utpatihi. There was never a birth for me. I was ever there. Where is the question of birth and death? Na baddhaha. I was never bound. Then where is the question of striving to come out of bondage? Na sadhakaha. Na mumukshuhu. There was never a stage when I was a mumukshu. Because I was ever muktaha. I was ever free. It is the same experience which we have in the sleep. So in the sleep you see dream, and in the dream you are struggling, a tiger is running behind you and you are running. And then tiger pounces on you and you wake up. Then what is your experience? There was never a tiger. There was never a runner. Isn't it? It is the same thing. You were free, you are free, you will ever remain free. But why is it that I am experiencing bondage? Mana eva manushyanam karanam bandha mokshayoho. This notion which you are having that you are bound, it is only mind. Remove the mind. Overcome the mind. Transcend the mind by witnessing the mind. Got it? Your enemy is your mind. Your friend is your purified mind. Your enemy is your impure mind. Ashuddha manas is your enemy. Shuddha manas is your Atmaiva hyatmano bandhuhu Atmaiva ripuratmanaha. Om sarve bhavantu sukhinah sarve santu niramayah sarve bhadrani pashyantu ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhavet असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। हरिः ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः ॐ।